So today we'll be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. The last episode was a crazy one as we saw a very big war happening over in here in Europe with the Derlandian coalition, where we saw the collapse of Derlandia and them losing a lot of land. And other than that, we saw some exploration over here into China and into Australia, but that's mostly about it, as the episode mainly focused on the Derlandian coalition. But this episode will have way more of exploration in China, Australia, and in the Americas. So let's waste no time and get straight into this video. And our first stop for today is over here in North America, where in the last episode we saw that Derlandia has lost their colonies in North America, and we now have these three independent countries, kind of being a very early version of the US. And these countries, at first, they will keep doing exactly what they were doing under Derlandia, and this is to explore some of North America. You know, they did get independence from Derlandia, but this doesn't mean that they do not want to explore these lands. So this is exactly what they'll do, as they also go here along the Mississippi River and start exploring through the south, meeting up with around the Florida regions and up here, encircling the Great Lakes and finding this other lake in here. This is a pretty big dang amount of exploration, and these countries now being free with their own governments will also go ahead and expand a little. First of all, the New England country will turn more into a New York country as they take all this land and become pretty big and way more noticeable on the map. And second of all, we see the Quebec country go around and take some more territories like this, and they will claim these northern parts of Quebec. As for the Newfoundland country, they are kind of sandwiched in here between the two other nations, so instead of exploring or going to war, they'll make an alliance with one of these two countries, and this is the New York country. Now I should probably not call these guys the New York country because they are not really in New York yet. I should probably call them that only after they get to New York. But even then, we'll see the formation of the 4-point star alliance between these two guys. But after these two nations make the 4-point star alliance, now the Quebec country will be pretty pissed about this. They'll be like, hey, why didn't you also invite me into this? And they kinda leave them on red, and the relations get cut between the two sides. That's right, chat, we are starting to have drama in the Americas, and this will prompt the Quebec country to start expanding even more across these lands they have already explored previously, and now they'll be conquering them and going like this, taking all this land plus this little island further away, and now they do become definitely the biggest and the strongest of the North American countries. But if you add up the power of the New York and Newfoundland country, they are slightly stronger than Quebec, so we'll see about that. Now I should address the fact that these three guys aren't the only countries in North America. Now yes, as full independent sovereign countries, yes, these are the only three ones. But throughout North America there's a lot of indigenous tribes and mini civilizations over in here, like in real life. But compared to real life, there was no big colonial empire to colonize the entire continent and pretty much kill everyone in here. Now granted, because of their land, yeah, some tribes did get killed over in here where these three countries are, but most of them had been left independent to grow, and now we are gonna mark some of the bigger tribes in North America. Well, these are all the new countries I have added, and I'm gonna say again, these countries did exist previously. In fact, some of them date back to like the times of episode 4 or 5, but now we are marking them because these are some of the more important North American tribes, and these are gonna be the ones we're gonna be talking about. And to kind of break it down, we have a country over in here in the Hudson Bay, one at the Great Lakes, a Mississippi country, a Louisiana country, a country here around Carolina, Cuba, Yucatan, some countries over here in Mexico, Texas, some Californian countries, Nevada. Then we have the Dakotan Empire, which is huge in here. And then finally we have some countries here on the Canadian coast, in Alaska, and in Vancouver. Now, although these people over in here didn't discover yet these tribes over in here, they did discover these four, but I'll also mark the explored territories of these other tribes. So first of all, the Louisianan tribe didn't go too far. I'm gonna say these tribes were also nomadic. For example, the one here in Louisiana initially originated in Florida. Also, then the Cuban one knows about the entire Cuba island, and not only getting their explored lands and like marking what they have explored so far, but also they do some explorations now. As for the Mexican country, they know about a bunch of land over in here into inner Mexico and along the coast. And for these two guys, they have explored a lot in the Baja and here on the Mexican coast, and they do know about this entire chunk of land, which is pretty impressive for them. But these two have been pretty friendly with each other, so it makes sense. And also these guys have not explored that much. That was mostly because of some leaders, some expansionist leaders that pretty much expanded the country into all the explored lands. And here for this Texan country, they do meet up with the sea. This is something recent that happened in like the last 10 years since I marked them on the map. Now definitely the biggest piece of explored land resides over here between the Nevada country and the Dakotan Empire, as these countries pretty much had an entire world of their own. The Dakotan Empire, it's pretty much it's kind of like the Roman Empire of North America, because they have explored the hellish amount of land over in here, almost even meeting up with the southern country in there in New Mexico. And this is all the land that they have explored. And now for the last couple of countries, they haven't done a crazy amount of exploration. For example, the Californian country had done very little. They've only done this, and this is currently what's explored by all the countries in the world combined from North America. Now the European descendants over in here, they do not know about these tribes in here yet, and the tribes don't know about the outsiders, but they are about to meet each other very soon. Now we're gonna go back to Asia, not to China yet, because a country is actually gonna expand here for once, and this is gonna be the Pakistani nation. Now this Pakistani nation isn't known to be one of the most strongest of nations in the world, but they are looking forward towards expansionism and about growing their nation and becoming stronger. First of all, with a new leader, and with the help of a new leader, they'll gain this land in here, followed by the next couple of others. Also important to note that this happened in parallel to the explorations over here in North America, but these guys will go and expand a lot more, now even meeting up with the border of the Central Asian purple team, and then they will expand across these huge amounts of Afghan and Pakistani lands into Asia, and eventually they will take all of this land. And shortly after, we'll also see this purple nation take a page out of their book and also start to expand quite a bit, and they will be claiming all these lands, and I'm gonna be, well, fixing these borders, they're horrendous. Alright, much better. And now these two Pakistani nations had expanded a bit, and don't think that the Red Indian nation is gonna forget about this and is gonna miss out on this, as now they are also expanding and they are gonna be claiming some lands over in here, followed by the brown Indian nation also going around and claiming some new lands. Now their intentions are to go more into the Bengali areas. Most exactly their goal is to reach over here up into the Malacca Peninsula or around the border with it. So for now they'll do just that, and they'll be exploring and expanding into these Bengali areas. Then this orange country will also find itself expanding over in here and meeting up with the Caspian Sea, which is great for them. Until then they only had this lake to, well, to live off of, but now with the Caspian Sea this is a way better water source, which leads to, well, better everything in their nation. They have better water to drink, they have better water to fish in and like get food and stuff, so this is honestly pretty dang good for them. And then the Grey Nation will see what they are doing, and they'll decide that, you know what, we want some too, so they'll start to expand over into these lands, and although not as successful, they will end up getting some land over in here. And then a very radical leader over in the blue country will kind of have a vision and a pretty big question: how east could we go? Like, only how east could we expand? So he'll pretty much just do that. He'll pretty much just send a lot of armies over in here to, well, claim land over in here, also kind of thickening their borders like this. And then they kind of go around, and then they have a pretty bloody war here with Hauria. Hauria will pretty much just send their armies back at them and, well, push them into here. And pretty much when they get back over to here, this is where they surrender and die. But this is not for nothing, as we do still see the blue team, as the Mongol forces didn't go over to here. They'll be able to expand pretty heavily into these regions, forming a pretty notable empire over here in the Central Asian parts. Now the countries around see the lessening amount of land in Central Asia, so we'll see the blue country starting to expand over in here and do end up claiming this piece of land. Then similar, we see the orange country over in here also start to expand here, and they do get this piece of land. The Grey Nation, although they just expanded, will do another expansion. They barely meet up with the sea, and then they kind of focus on going here in the south, and they will end up claiming all these lands. And finally we see the greenish lime nation over in here. They also go around and expand, and they do end up taking these lands. Here we see pretty much what gets partitioned out of Central Asia for now. Now we'll see Raksim go ahead and claim this archipelago of islands in the Indian Ocean. But going down south to their neighbor, being the pirates in Indonesia, they will keep exploring over in here. Now in the last episode they have explored Australia, and in fact they have discovered Australia, which is definitely one of their biggest achievements so far, discovering a whole new continent. But now they'll go ahead and explore the rest of Papua New Guinea, and from here they go and discover a lot of these islands here in the Pacific. But next they'll go back to exploring Australia, and now they discover this land, and they have a pretty big shortcut over in here from Timor-Leste to Australia, which definitely helps them a lot. And then we see them making a huge amount of discovery, as first of all they discover this entire big piece of land thingy, and with this they explore all of these parts from Australia, discovering a lot of the oceanic continent. And now the pirates are doing great. They are almost at their peak. Spoiler alert, they will be at their peak in a few episodes, but they are starting to get there as now they are exploring a lot of Oceania, and they are having a lot of success doing that as now they discover pretty much all of northern Australia. And now we see Taiwan being explored by, well, explorers over in here. And now we'll go to our daily exploration in China. As now we see a lot of exploration happening over here around the Himalayan mountains, as now people are starting to venture in there. Most of them do not come out alive, but it's pretty brave of them for, well, trying. But explorations continue around in here through Myanmar and in the Chinese regions over in here that are pretty mountainous. But despite that, they do still have a lot of success in doing so, and they will continue exploring like this through these parts. And also I'm gonna say this, similar to North America, China also has a lot of tribes over in here, but we are gonna discuss those in the next episode. But now going over here to Persdia, in the last couple of episodes we did see them collapse as, you know, during the age of fragmentation. They were a very huge country. They had territory from Sri Lanka over to the Red Indian nation, but they kind of got a bit unstable, and with a whole bunch of rebellions and independence wars, they have lost all that land, and now they are reduced only here to South India. But they do feel like now, with all these Indian countries becoming strong and growing, they feel like they do not want to miss out on these expansions, so they will actually go to war with one of these countries, and they will go to war with Sabisha, this skin country over in here. Now Persian troops will barge over the border with Sabisha and start to invade this country. Now if you remember back in episode 5 when India first, well, got discovered, Persia and Sabisha were the very first two countries over in here, and back from then they had a pretty big rivalry, and this rivalry will now come in the age of conflict to affect these two countries as now they go to war, as Persia wants to bring back its influence while Sabisha wants to, well, not die. But Sabisha will be successful in repelling Persian attacks over in here and not allow them to invade in this part. But on the coast it's a whole different story, as Persia is way more prepared in here and has sent most of their divisions in here to capture the capital. Now granted, Sabisha is able to push them back to their border over in here and also push them quite a bit in these parts. Now they are unsuccessful in fully pushing them back to the border and kicking them out of the nation, and that's mostly because now Persia goes and captures their capital, which is pretty bad for them. And from here Persia will kinda go inner into their territory and kinda make multiple kind of groups like this, kind of more encirclements, until pretty much the entire nation will fall over to Persia, and we can take a look at the peace treaty between these two. And in the peace treaty, Persia fully annexes Sabisha. Now this is huge because, well, Sabisha has existed for a very long time, and Persia did seem pretty weak, but now they have just shown that they are still strong by annexing one of the oldest and most significant countries from this region. And with this, Persia once again becomes a top power over here in India, and it seems like they are on the run to become a top 10 power once again. And for one of the final events of the video, we'll now have a war breaking out between these two Siberian nations. But now we are gonna have the war break out, and at first it's the red country which has the advantage now. They are the way stronger country as they hold the capital of the former nation that existed in here, so they are gonna be pretty easily pushing in here. And as for these countries, None of them is strong. In fact, I'm gonna say they are all very weak. Like, probably the number of soldiers these countries are using, it's probably only triple digits of soldiers on both armies. But anyway, the red army will absolutely crush the skin one. Now the skin one is a bit better off in like cold fighting, so they will push them a bit in here. But similar enough to what we saw in Persia and Sabisha, we now see the red country pushing over here. They'll take their capital, and after this country will surrender. And in the peace treaty, we see the red country taking all of this land from the skin country. Now the skin country is even weaker than they used to be, and the red country becomes stronger, so this might be a pretty interesting start to their imperial ideals that they have. And for the final event of the video, we are now gonna go back to Hibernia. Now it's about here that they land in Cuba and meet up with the Orange Cuban nation, and they are actually gonna be pretty friendly. In fact, they are gonna be very friendly with each other. And for the other things that Hibernia will do, they'll go around and explore a bit of Central America. They now explore here into Cuba, and then they go even further into the inner continent around the Amazon rainforest. Now yet they do not venture into the Amazon rainforest. That thing is very hard to explore to, and even like to just go through. So they will just go around like this over the Amazon and just be happy with exploring these pieces of land, which is still pretty nice. They now explore this, and their explorations are going really well, discovering even more tribes on the way. But similar to China, we'll look at those tribes in the next episode. Because this one came to an end, and this is where we are gonna end today's video. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.